And now we go through the switches. The only two switches that have to be on are the Dynon switch and the trim servo switch. Normally, the nav lights and the flap actuator switches will also be on. The defogger switch can go on. The radio bus switch can go on if you like. In the checklist here, we have Dynon switch on. It's on. And then trim servo switch on. Trim servo switch is on. Those are the two that have to be on. Then we can turn the master on.
And something to talk about is at the moment the flap actuator switch light does not illuminate.
Right.
And so it is functioning, and you can confirm that by running your flaps, but that's how things are at this moment.
So now the Dynon, once we turn the master on, we got power to the Dynon, it will come up.
And there's our version.
So first thing to do is have a look through our engine instruments. We have here the right fuel gauge, 26 liters in the right tank. The left fuel gauge, 24 liters in the left tank. Fuel flow, this is how much fuel is flowing to the engine, 0. Liters remaining, this is the fuel computer, how much fuel we've told it has on board. Time remaining is simply how much fuel there is in the computer divided by how much the fuel flow is. So you get an idea of how long you can fly at your current power setting. Next, the RPM is right here, this arc here. So right now it's 0. The green starts at 2000 and the red line is 2750. Manifold pressure over here. The left side is the cylinder head temperature gauges. So right now all 4 cylinders are at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. And the right side is the exhaust gas temperature gauge. All our exhaust gas temperatures are at 66 degrees. Oil pressure, far left. Oil temperature in the middle here. And then battery volts on the far right, 12.2. And then we've got a few little items, Hobbs time, air time. This will reset once we take off. And this will just count up how long you've been in the air if you forgot to take your takeoff time. The trip timers are something you can reset. If you're taking the airplane on an extended trip, you could reset those timers and keep track of how long your series of flights has been, or how much flying you've done that day. If you want the map up,
let's just discuss, we've got some flashing things here.
Okay.
And so what do they indicate?
So anytime any parameter gets into the red, the Dynon will start flashing those numbers. So right now, because the engine's not running, we have 0 psi. And because the alternator's not running, we have 12.2 on the battery. We're just reading battery volts. So a normal reading for oil pressure is anywhere between 10 and 90 pounds. The red arc is never to be gone into. The yellow is only for idle. Normal flight, we should be in the green. Idle, we can be in the yellow. The battery voltage is 13.8 to 14.5 when the alternator is running. So if the alternator is running, this number will be green, everything will be fine. Anytime these red lights flash, you will also get a warning here on the right side that will flash here, reminding you to have a look to see what's wrong. Because even if the engine page is not up, you'll still get those warnings. Right now, we just turned on, it knows the engine's not running, and for the first 5 minutes, it will inhibit all the engine warnings. After 5 minutes, it will put a warning up here.
And also, some of the flashing numbers are red, and our oil temperature is yellow. And as I understand that red is an immediate concern warning, and if the background color is yellow, that's something that's not critical, but if it was in the green range, that would turn to just a white background. Is that correct?
Exactly. If it's white, everything's fine. If it's yellow, it's trying to draw your attention to it. In this case, it's drawing attention to our oil temperature because it's too cold. Once it gets to 75, then it doesn't care anymore. Cylinder head temperatures are also too cold. Obviously, the cylinder's not running, so it's trying to draw your attention to those cylinders that are not running. Or if they get too hot, they'll turn yellow to try and draw your attention to the cylinder head temperatures on the hot cylinders. Once it goes to red, then you've allowed it to get beyond the yellow, and now it's time to do something immediately. Yellows can be ignored if you know why they're yellow. If you're in the climb and it's a very hot day and the temperatures get into the yellow on the cylinder head, that's perfectly okay, as long as you don't get into the red. If it gets into the red, you need to do something about it right now. On the primary flight display here, after we've checked our engine instruments, we have our attitude. Brown is the ground, blue is the sky. Airspeed in knots over here. This will give you a digital readout once the airspeed comes alive, and then there's a tape that moves up and down that will point to the current airspeed. There's also a true airspeed reading down here, which is based on the outside air temperature and the altitude. The temperature probe is not working right now, so the true airspeed can't be relied on. The ground speed comes from the GPS, so you can always be seeing what your ground speed is. Even when you're short final, you can just glance down here, make sure you don't have a tailwind. Now we've been more than 5 minutes on the ground, so the warnings have come up. Whenever the warning starts flashing, we need to push the warning button. Up comes battery volts low, oil pressure low. Well, the battery volts are low because the alternator's not running. The oil pressure low because the engine's not running, so we can turn that off again. Keep going. This is our compass rose with our heading up here. On the right side, the altitude is showing 18-20 feet and an altitude tape. And on the vertical speed over here, showing climb or descend. Altimeter setting down here. And to set the altimeter setting, we want to find the baro knob. This one here says heading, this one says baro. So if I turn this, it changes the altimeter setting. Now we can also change what these knobs do just by pushing up and down on them. So if I push up, the menu comes up. These are my options. I can set it to baro, and then if I turn it, it changes the baro. The angle of bank, the yellow marker here, will show angle of bank, so it'll be 10, 20, 30, 45 degrees. And the little white ball here is your ball, just like your ball in your turn and bank indicator, or turn coordinator. So if it's on the left, you need to push on the left pedal. If it's to the right, you need to push on the right pedal. You step on the ball.
And on the extreme right is your VSI,
Vertical speed, yeah.
So if you're flying, this actually goes up and down, and it shows in
Thousands of feet.
thousands or hundreds of feet.
Thousands of feet.
Okay.